10 Principles of Winners in Life. Published by Veridian. Introduction. Winners aren't born in a single brilliant moment. They are built in the quiet, ordinary hours when no one is watching, by choices that look small at the time, but over months and years, stack like stones into a bridge that crosses from who you were to who you can become. If you're reading this book, you've already taken the first step: curiosity. Curiosity is the thin crack of light through which transformation begins. This book will give you 10 principles, practical, repeatable, sometimes stubbornly simple, that winners use to shape their lives. Not winners as in trophies and applause only, but winners in the deeper sense. People who pursue meaningful goals, consistently overcome setbacks, and create a life they're quietly proud of. You'll notice I use the word principle, not rule. Rules feel rigid. Principles are flexible truths you can apply across moments and circumstances. Think of principles as the operating system of a life that wins, a system that adapts to new hardware, whether that's a new job, a new relationship, or a sudden shift in health or fortune. Each chapter will focus on one principle, explain why it matters, show common mistakes people make with it, and offer practical steps to apply it tomorrow. I won't promise that you will never fail. Far from it. Failure is the soil in which every good life grows. Instead, I promise a clearer map, so when setbacks come, and they will, you lose less time wandering and more time learning. Before we dive into the 10 principles, let me be honest about something important. The most transformative changes are rarely dramatic. They are accumulative. The person who reads one self-help book, feels inspired for a day, and then slips back into old habits is not failing because they lack talent. They're failing because change without structure is like trying to steer a ship with a finger. The principles in this book are designed to become structure. They are small enough to practice daily, yet powerful enough to redirect the arc of your life. You might be wondering, is this another list of platitudes? No, I've chosen principles that would stand the test of time and culture. They apply whether you want to start a business, repair a relationship, climb a career ladder, or become more content with what you already have. You'll find practical exercises, short real-life examples, and small rituals you can begin immediately. But more than that, you'll find the tone of someone who's been both knocked down and found their way back up. That perspective matters. It's easy to write from the top of the mountain. It's more useful to write from the trail. One of the hidden truths I want to share up front is uncomfortable but liberating. Winners are not immune to doubt, fear, or laziness. They experience the same inner weather as everyone else. What separates them is not the absence of those feelings, but the development of habits and attitudes that make action possible anyway. A principle in this book isn't a guarantee of unstoppable momentum. It's an invitation to practice consistency, judgment, and self-kindness. In practice, that looks like showing up when you don't feel like it, choosing curiosity over shame when you fail, and building systems that reduce the friction between intention and action. Another truth: the environment matters. We are social animals. The people, places, and routines we live with shape us in ways we underappreciate. Winners manage their environment more deliberately. That doesn't always mean dramatic changes like moving cities or quitting a job, though sometimes it does. More often it means small nudges, turning off notifications during focus hours, prioritizing sleep, choosing 2 friends who will tell you the truth, or setting a time limit for doom scrolling. You'll find detailed, practical ways to shape your environment in later chapters. Because principle without implementation is simply good intention. This book is structured to be read sequentially, but you can also pick a chapter that resonates with you today and start there. Each chapter stands alone as a tool you can take into the week ahead. I recommend reading the introduction and then deciding, do you need discipline, clarity, resilience? Once you know which piece feels most urgent, spend a week practicing that principle before moving to the next. Depth beats breadth when it comes to personal change. You'll also notice that I avoid moralizing. The aim here is not to tell you how to be a perfect person or to compare your life to someone else's highlight reel. The aim is to give you methods, blunt, usable human methods that help you win in the arenas that matter to you. Winning might look like earning a promotion, repairing an old relationship, freeing up weekends, or simply waking up with more energy and focus. The definition of success in this book is yours to choose, and I'll help you create the habits that make that definition possible. Before we move into the first core principle, let me give you one small experiment to try right now. Write down one meaningful goal you could plausibly achieve in the next 90 days. Make it specific. If it's fitness related, write the number in a metric. Lose 8 pounds or run 5 kilometers without stopping. If it's professional, write the deliverable. Publish a portfolio of 3 case studies or arrange 5 informational interviews. If it's personal, write what winning would feel like. Have a sincere conversation with my partner about money, or read 4 books and share notes with a friend. Now, keep that paper where you can see it for the next month. Why start with a 90-day goal? Because the horizon is short enough to keep urgency, but long enough to allow real work and growth. Winners don't chase vague dreams. They break them into manageable chunks and then show up daily. In the chapters that follow, we'll build the scaffolding to support that daily showing up. One last thing before we start. I've hidden a small surprise in the final chapter, a single secret principle that stitches the other 9 into a cohesive way of living. It's not a magic bullet, and it won't replace work. But if you hold it in mind as you practice the other principles, you'll find that many obstacles begin to feel less painful and more instructive. Consider the book's gift to those who read all the way through. All right, ready? Let's begin. The first core principle is deceptively simple but foundational. Clarity. Without clarity, energy leaks everywhere. With it, the smallest steps become aligned, effective, and surprisingly potent. Turn the page and we'll begin to sharpen what you want and why it matters. Principle 1, clarity. Clarity is the quiet superpower winners cultivate. It isn't glamorous. It doesn't make for good social media fodder. But clarity is the difference between motion and movement, between doing a lot and making real progress. When your goals are foggy, energy leaks out in every direction. You say yes to too many things. You change course when things get hard, and you measure progress with feelings instead of facts. Clarity gives you the map, the compass, and the audacity to follow them. Think of clarity as 3 related habits that live together. Knowing what you want, knowing why it matters, and knowing what you won't do. The first 2 are obvious, but the third, the discipline of saying no, is where most people stumble. Winners are not superhuman. They simply have a clearer boundary between what belongs in their life and what doesn't. That boundary protects time, attention, and momentum. Let me give you a simple image. Imagine you're in a forest at dusk, and you want to reach a cabin across a river. Without clarity, you wander, attracted by a glow in one direction or a path in another. With clarity, a named destination, a reason you need to be there, and an understanding of the terrain, your steps become purposeful. You might still get muddy. You might turn back and take a different route, but you spend your energy moving toward the cabin, not following every deer or mushroom you see. Common mistakes with clarity are predictable. People set broad goals like get fit or be successful, without defining what those words mean in practice. They confuse activity with progress. Replying to emails for hours feels productive, but often it's just busy work. They chase other people's definitions of success, a promotion because someone else expects it, or a lifestyle because it looks good in photos. And they underestimate the power of constraints. Curious, but powerful, winners choose limits that force creativity. So, how do you sharpen clarity in a way that's honest and useful? Start with language. Specific words change behavior. Replace vague goals with measurable outcomes. Read more becomes read 4 books in the next 90 days and take 1-page notes on each. Save money becomes put $300 into savings every month for the next 6 months. Specific goals give you a scoreboard. They turn feelings into data. They make it possible to test and adjust. But numbers alone aren't enough. You also need an explicit why. When you anchor a goal to a meaningful reason, not just, I should, but I want this, because your motivation becomes deeper and more resilient. Maybe you want to save money so you can leave a job that drains you, or maybe you want to read those books because they teach skills that let you be more present with your kids. When the why is personal, small setbacks feel like obstacles to a purpose, not evidence that you don't belong. Next, practice defining what you won't do. This is a radical act of clarity. Create a no list. It can be short. 3 things you will refuse for the next 30 days. Maybe it's attending networking events that don't have clear outcomes, or checking email before lunch, or agreeing to projects that demand weekend work. The no list frees up attention and reduces decision fatigue. Winners are not just good at doing the right things. They are expert at avoiding the wrong ones. Another practical tool is the 90-day horizon. Break big aims into 90-day experiments. This horizon is long enough to let you accomplish something real and short enough to maintain urgency. Decide on a single measurable outcome for the next 90 days. Sketch a weekly action plan and set 1 weekly review to check progress. The weekly review is where clarity becomes a living practice. It keeps your focus honest and lets you pivot without panic. Decision rules are also clarity accelerants. Instead of making every choice from scratch, create simple rules that guide behavior. Examples: if a new commitment takes less than 2 hours and aligns with my 90-day goal, accept it, otherwise defer. Or if an opportunity doesn't move me closer to my North Star metric, say no. Rules remove friction and stop your attention from being stolen by novelty. Winners treat rules like guardrails. They don't eliminate creativity. They channel it. A small but powerful clarity habit is to write down your outcome every morning in 1 sentence, and in the evening write 1 sentence about what you did that moved you closer. Keep it short. The point is not to create a novel, but to create a trace, a daily breadcrumb trail that shows whether your actions align with your goals. Over time, that trace becomes an honest record you can learn from. There will be noise. People will offer advice, trends will promise shortcuts, and your own mood will try to detour you. That's why environment matters. Make your clarity easier by arranging your context. Put the things that help you succeed in plain sight. A calendar with blocked focus time, a note with your 90-day outcome on your desk, a short list of tasks for the day. Remove triggers that lead to distraction. Mute apps during focus hours. Hide social media in a folder, or change the default page on your browser. Clarity isn't just a thought pattern. It's a small architecture of your life. Let me give a quick, real-world example. A friend wanted to start a freelance design business, but kept floundering. Her initial goal was get freelance clients. We worked on clarity. She changed it to acquire 3 paying clients and earn $4,500 in billed work within 90 days. Her why was to build a runway to leave a full-time job by January. Her no list included taking pro bono work that didn't pay or networking events without clear leads. She set a rule: only proposals that fit her target industry would be pursued, with the outcome, the why, the no list, and rule. Her daily actions focus on sending tailored proposals and following up. Within 11 weeks, she had 3 clients and the confidence to plan her exit. The clarity didn't remove the hard work, but it made the work efficient and directed. You can start practicing clarity right now with 3 small exercises. First, pick one goal for the next 90 days and write it down in one specific sentence with a measurable outcome. Second, write your why beneath it in 1 or 2 sentences. Third, write a no list of 3 items you will refuse for at least 30 days. Post these where you will see them. If you want to push further, adopt a weekly 30-minute review. Each Friday, answer 3 short questions. What moved me forward this week? What wasted my time? What one adjustment will I make next week? Use those answers to update your actions and, if necessary, your goals. The review is where clarity meets iteration. Winners rarely get everything right the first time. They simply learn faster because they have clearer measurements and processes. Clarity is not a one-time event. It's a habit that needs maintenance. Some weeks you'll be unsure. That's normal. Return to the basics. Specify, anchor, and declutter. When you do, your days begin to pull in the same direction. Decisions become easier. Execution becomes truer, and the small steps you take turn into serious forward motion. That's the quiet, steady mechanics of winning. Practice clarity this week. Choose one outcome, name your why, and say no to 3 things. Check in on Friday and notice how much lighter the path feels when your steps have a destination. Principle 2, consistency. Consistency is the quiet engine behind every meaningful achievement. It's less dramatic than a lightning bolt breakthrough, but more reliable. If clarity is the map, consistency is a steady footstep that follows it every day. Winners don't rely on bursts of inspiration. They build systems that make progress inevitable, not spectacularly fast, but unstoppable over time. Consistency is deceptively simple. Do small things repeatedly. The difficulty isn't intellectual. Most people understand the math of compound effort. It's psychological. We confuse intensity for progress. A weekend of frenzied work feels productive, but it rarely outperforms modest daily effort spread over months. Imagine 2 runners. One sprints occasionally and collapses. The other jogs a little each morning. After a year, the jogger is fitter, steadier, and more capable of handling surprises. Life is mostly endurance, not sprints. One common error is setting goals that require constant heroism. I will write a 2,000-word article every day. Sounds noble until life happens. A sick child, a long meeting travel. When your system depends on heroics, it collapses the moment conditions change. Winners design systems that survive the boring, the busy, and the tired. They ask, what is the smallest useful unit of work I can commit to and still call progress? Often the answer is far smaller than you think. 20 minutes of focused writing, 5 gym sets, or 1 cold call. Small units are low resistance, and once they exist, they're easy to compound. Another mistake is measuring consistency only by frequency. It's not enough to show up. You must show up with intention. Repeating the same low-quality actions create a ritual of busyness, not progress. Winners pair consistency with feedback loops. They do something small, check whether it moved the needle, and adjust. That loop, act, measure, adapt, turns repetition into learning. Without it, consistency becomes stubbornness wrapped in ego. A practical way to build consistency is to anchor new habits to existing routines, a trick behavior scientists call habit stacking. If you already brush your teeth every morning, attach a new 2-minute habit immediately after 5 push-ups, 3 minutes of journaling, or reading 1 paragraph. The existing routine acts like Velcro. The new habit sticks more easily. Start ridiculously small. If your goal is to read more, commit to 1 page a day. 1 page is embarrassingly small, but it lowers the activation energy and builds identity. You become someone who reads daily. Over time, 1 page becomes 10, and then you have momentum. Another tool is the minimum viable commitment. Decide the minimum action you'll do on bad days and the fuller action you'll do on good days. For example, minimum, write 200 words. Ideal, write 1,000. On days when life intrudes, meeting the minimum keeps your practice alive and preserves the psychological habit of showing up. Winners protect the ritual more than the output on any single day. Consistency thrives on visible tracking. A simple calendar where you mark every day you complete the habit creates a chain effect. You don't want to break the chain. This isn't superstition. Human brains prefer continuity. Seeing a streak of small wins nudges you to keep it going. Use whatever system fits your life, a physical calendar, a habit app, or a notebook. The tool matters less than the ritual of checking and marking. Environment design is also crucial. Make the desired behavior the default and the undesired one harder. If you want to eat healthier, put fruit on the counter and hide snacks in a drawer. If you want to focus, open a new browser profile without social accounts during work blocks. Winners don't rely solely on willpower. They shape context that guide behavior automatically. Consistency is less about force of character and more about gentle engineering. Accountability magnifies consistency. Telling another person your plan and checking in increases the cost of skipping. A short weekly text to a friend, a paid coach, or a partner in crime who shares your habit can keep you honest. Public commitments raise the bar even higher. When you announce a goal, you add social reputation to your motivation toolkit. Winners use accountability not as punishment, but as a supportive structure that raises the baseline of what gets done. Resilience and consistency are married. Life will throw interruptions at you. Illness, travel, burnout. How you react determines whether a consistent practice endures. 2 rules help. Forgive quickly and restart fast. If you miss a day, don't let guilt fester into abandonment. Note what happened, learn, and re-enter the habit the next feasible moment. Winners treat lapses as data, not destiny. They rarely let a missed day become a missed month. There's also a moral hazard to consistency. It can be used to justify stagnation. Repetition without growth is just maintenance. To avoid this, schedule periodic reviews. Every 4 weeks, ask, is this habit still aligned with my 90-day outcome? Is the difficulty appropriate? What adjustments are needed? The review is where consistency meets strategy. Winners keep their rituals but alter their targets and methods as conditions change. Let me give you a real example. A colleague wanted to build strength but never found time for the gym. We created a plan, 5 20-minute strength sessions per week, each built around 3 compound movements. The minimum viable commitment was 2 sets per session on bad days. She logged workouts on a simple checklist and sent a 1-line weekly update to a friend. Within 3 months, she not only gained measurable strength, but also found that the habit made her sleep and mood better. The modest Consistent plan fit her life and survived travel, work deadlines, and family obligations because it was small, visible, and forgiving. To practice consistency this week, choose one tiny habit that directly supports your 90-day goal. Make the unit small, something you can do even when everything else fails. Anchor it to a current routine. Track it visibly. Create a minimum version for bad days. Tell one person about it. At the end of the week, reflect for 10 minutes. Did you keep the habit? What was easy? What blocked you? Make one small change and repeat. Consistency is not glamorous. It's often invisible and unremarkable, but it is the most reliable way to turn potential into reality. Winners aren't people who never waver. They are people who come back again and again to the work that matters. Over time, those repeated choices compound into skill, reputation, and freedom. If clarity gives you the destination, consistency carries you there one steady day at a time. Keep walking. Principle 3. Responsibility. Responsibility is the moment a person stops negotiating with reality and starts working with it. It is not about blame, shame, or carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. True responsibility is simpler and far more powerful. The decision to own your choices, your reactions, and your next move, regardless of whose fault a situation may be. Winners adopt responsibility not because life is fair, but because ownership is the fastest path to influence. Most people misunderstand responsibility. They hear it as accusation. It's all your fault. Winners hear something different. This is within your control. That shift changes everything. When you take responsibility, you reclaim agency. When you avoid it, you outsource your future to circumstances, other people, or luck. Complaining might feel justified, but it quietly drains your power. Ownership, even in unfair situations, gives you leverage. A common trap is selective responsibility. People gladly take credit for success, but distribute blame for failure. This habit protects ego, but blocks growth. Winners reverse this reflex. They take responsibility for outcomes, good or bad, and use them as feedback. That doesn't mean accepting abuse or denying external factors. It means asking a better question. Given the reality I'm in, what is my best next action? Responsibility turns attention away from the past and toward the next decision. Another trap is confusing responsibility with control. You cannot control other people's behavior, market conditions, or sudden crises. You can control preparation, boundaries, effort, and response. Winners are precise about this distinction. They don't waste energy trying to manage what's outside their reach. They invest heavily in what they can influence. This precision keeps them calm under pressure and effective when things change. Responsibility begins internally with language. The words you use in your own head shape behavior. Notice phrases like, I can't, they made me, or if only. These phrases signal a transfer of agency. Replace them with ownership language. I chose, I didn't prepare, I will adjust. This isn't self-criticism, it's clarity. Ownership language keeps you aligned with action instead of stuck in explanation. There's a practical exercise winners use to build responsibility muscle, the ownership audit. When something goes wrong, write down 3 columns. In the first, list external factors that contributed. In the second, list your own actions or omissions. In the third, write one concrete change you will make next time. The goal is not to minimize external factors, but to extract learning. Every setback contains at least one adjustable variable under your control. Finding it turns frustration into progress. Responsibility also shows up in commitments. Winners are careful about what they promise, to others and to themselves. Over-promising and under-delivering erodes self-trust. Each broken promise, even a small one, weakens your belief in your own word. Responsible people protect that belief. They make fewer commitments and keep them more reliably. When they can't, they communicate early and clearly. Integrity isn't perfection. It's alignment between word and action. Another aspect of responsibility is emotional ownership. Feelings are real, but they are not commands. Winners allow emotions without letting them dictate behavior. They might feel angry, afraid, or unmotivated, but they don't outsource decisions to those states. Instead, they ask, what action aligns with my values despite how I feel? This skill is especially important during conflict. Owning your emotional response, instead of blaming others for how you feel, creates room for mature dialogue and problem solving. Responsibility scales with influence. The more responsibility you take, the more trust you earn. In teams, responsible people stand out quickly. They don't deflect, gossip, or wait to be told what to fix. They say, I'll handle this. And then they do. Over time, opportunities gravitate toward them, not because they demand them, but because others feel safe relying on them. Winners understand that responsibility is a magnet for leadership. There's also a quiet freedom in responsibility. When you stop blaming circumstances, you stop fighting reality. Acceptance doesn't mean approval. It means seeing things as they are so you can act effectively. This frees mental energy previously spent on resentment. Many people stay stuck not because they lack options, but because they are busy arguing with the past. Winners release that argument and invest in the present. Let me share a simple example. A man I work with missed a major deadline and lost a client. Initially, he blamed unclear instructions and last-minute changes. All true, but after cooling down, he did an ownership audit. He realized he hadn't clarified expectations in writing and hadn't flagged risks early. His adjustment was simple. New projects would begin with written scope and weekly check-ins. He couldn't undo the loss, but he prevented a repeat. Within months, his reliability became a competitive advantage. Responsibility didn't punish him. It refined him. To practice responsibility this week, choose one area of your life where you feel stuck or frustrated. Write a short, honest paragraph answering 3 questions. What happened? What part of this was within my control? What will I do differently next time? Then act on that decision. Even if it's small, the act itself reinforces agency. Another daily micro-practice is to end each day by naming one thing you did well and one thing you'll improve tomorrow. This balances responsibility with self-respect. Winners don't beat themselves up, they coach themselves. They combine honesty with forward motion. Responsibility is not heavy when practiced correctly. It's lightening. It removes the illusion that someone else is steering your life and replaces it with a grounded sense of authorship. You may not control the opening chapter you were given, but you are responsible for the next page. When you accept that fully, progress stops feeling accidental and starts feeling earned. This principle lays the groundwork for everything that follows. Without responsibility, clarity dissolves into excuses and consistency collapses under pressure. With it, you become someone who responds instead of reacts, who learns instead of blames, and who quietly builds a life that works. Principle 4. Resilience. Resilience is not the absence of pain, failure, or fear. It is the ability to absorb impact, recover, and continue forward without losing your sense of direction or self-respect. Winners are not protected from setbacks. They are trained by them. What looks like strength from the outside is often the result of many quiet recoveries no one applauded. Most people think resilience means being tough all the time, pushing through, suppressing emotion, never slowing down. That version breaks people. True resilience is more intelligent. It knows when to endure and when to rest, when to push and when to step back and reassess. It is flexible strength, not brittle toughness. Winners bend without breaking. A major misunderstanding is believing resilience is something you either have or don't. In reality, it is a skill set. Like muscle, it grows through stress followed by recovery. Avoid all stress and you stay weak. Take on too much without recovery and you burn out. Resilient people intentionally expose themselves to manageable difficulty and then deliberately restore. They train their nervous system to tolerate discomfort without panic. One of the biggest resilience killers is catastrophizing, turning a single setback into a story about permanent failure. A bad meeting becomes, "I'm terrible at this." A mishabit becomes, "I never stick to anything." Winners interrupt this pattern. They separate events from identity. A setback is data, not a verdict. This mental separation keeps challenges specific and solvable instead of global and paralyzing. Another resilience drain is isolation. When people struggle, they often withdraw, believing they should handle everything alone. Winners do the opposite. They build support before they need it. This doesn't mean constant vulnerability with everyone. It means having one or two trusted people who can listen without judgment and offer perspective. Shared load is lighter load. Resilience is rarely a solo achievement. There's also a physical dimension to resilience that many ignore. Sleep, nutrition, movement, and breathing patterns directly affect your capacity to handle stress. When your body is depleted, even small problems feel overwhelming. Winners treat their physical baseline as a strategic asset. They don't chase perfection, but they protect the fundamentals. 80% of resilience is biological before it is philosophical. A powerful resilience tool is reframing. This isn't positive thinking or denial. It's choosing a more useful interpretation. Ask yourself, what is this situation training me for? What skill is this pressure developing? When you frame adversity as preparation instead of punishment, endurance increases naturally. Many winners can trace their strongest skills back to periods they wouldn't willingly repeat, but wouldn't erase either. Another practice is shortening recovery time. You don't need to avoid falling. You need to get better at standing back up. Set a rule for yourself. How long will I allow myself to be off course? A day? An hour? Winners define this in advance. They allow disappointment, then return to action. This prevents emotional spirals from stealing weeks of progress. Let me give you an example. A woman launching an online course spent months preparing, only to have a disappointing first release. Very few people signed up. The emotional hit was real. Instead of quitting or pretending it didn't hurt, she took 2 days to feel it fully. Frustration, embarrassment, doubt. Then she reviewed feedback, simplified the offer, and relaunched with clearer messaging. The second launch succeeded. The difference wasn't talent. It was recovery speed. Resilience turned a near ending into a beginning. There's also a quiet courage in asking for help. Many people see this as weakness, but winners know better. Seeking guidance is a way of shortening the learning curve. Whether it's a mentor, therapist, coach, or experienced peer, outside perspective prevents you from being trapped in your own blind spots. Resilient people are resourceful, not prideful. Daily resilience can be trained with small rituals. One effective practice is a brief evening reflection. What was difficult today, and how did I handle it? This builds awareness of your coping patterns. Over time, you'll notice improvement, not in the absence of difficulty, but in your response to it. Another simple ritual is controlled breathing during stress. Slowing the breath signals safety to the nervous system and restores access to rational thinking. This is not mystical. It's physiological. Resilience also depends on meaning. Pain without meaning feels unbearable. Pain connected to purpose feels survivable. Winners keep their why close during hard times. They remind themselves that the struggle is in service of growth, freedom, contribution, mastery. This doesn't eliminate discomfort, but it gives it direction. Direction makes weight carryable. To practice resilience this week, choose one ongoing difficulty you've been avoiding or resenting. Write down what you can't control about it, then what you can. Take one small action in the controllable column. Next, define a recovery rule. If this knocks me off track, how quickly will I return? Finally, tell one trusted person what you're dealing with. You don't need solutions. You need connection. Resilience is not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It shows up as steadiness after disappointment, curiosity after failure, and self-respect during struggle. Over time, it becomes a reputation you carry within yourself. No matter what happens, I will find my way forward. That belief, earned through repetition, is one of the strongest advantages a winner can have. Principle 5. Focus. Focus is the quiet currency winners spend with discipline. In a world engineered to steal your attention, the ability to concentrate on the right thing for the right amount of time becomes a competitive advantage. Focus is not just about working harder. It's about working truer, aligning your attention with your clarity and consistency so that the hours you commit actually translate into meaningful progress. Focus begins with simple truth. Attention is finite. You can have many goals, but you can meaningfully push forward only a few at a time. Winners accept this constraint and design around it. They don't treat multitasking as a skill. They treat it as a productivity tax. Switching between tasks creates attention residue, the leftover thought stuff from the previous task that slows and degrades the next one. The more you switch, the less sharp you are. Focus is a habit of minimizing switches and maximizing deep, undistracted work. A common mistake is confusing busyness for focus. Checking email, hopping between tabs, and reacting to every incoming message feels like motion, but it's often shallow and scattered. Winners deliberately separate shallow work, email, logistics, meetings, from deep work, writing, strategy, creative problem solving. They schedule time for both and protect the deep blocks like a sacred appointment. The result is fewer hours but higher quality output. Practical focus starts with rules. Decide in advance what blocks of time are for deep work and what are for maintenance tasks. Set predictable boundaries. For example, block mornings from 9 to 11 for your highest leverage work, and reserve afternoons for meetings and email triage. When you don't decide these things, other people's priorities decide them for you. Winners make their calendar reflect their values. Another tool is the 3-task rule. Each day, identify the 3 outcomes that, if completed, would make the day a success. Keep the list short and specific. This rule forces choice and reduces the mental clutter of long to-do lists. Winners don't try to be exhaustive. They prioritize impact. When you know the 3 most important things, it's easy to say no to everything else. Environment design matters more than willpower. Make deep work easy and distractions harder. That might mean a tidy desk, noise-canceling headphones, or a browser extension that blocks social media during focus hours. It might mean using a different device for creative work than you use for messaging. The point isn't perfection, it's friction. Create enough friction between you and distraction that clicking a time-sucking site requires a small conscious act. Winners don't rely on heroic self-control. They engineer their context. Timing and biological rhythms are also part of focus. Notice when your energy and attention are highest during the day and schedule your hardest tasks then. For many people, that's the morning. For others, it's later. Respect your pattern. If you try to do deep work when your body is tuned for low energy maintenance, you'll produce mediocre results and burn out trying to force intensity. Winners align tasks with natural peaks and protect them fiercely. Micro routines help too. Before a deep block, do a short ritual to prepare your mind. Clear a small physical space. Write a one-sentence focus intention. Close unrelated tabs and set a timer. Rituals signal the brain that a different mode is required. Timers are underrated allies. A focused 90-minute block with a 5-minute break is often far more productive than 4 unfocused hours. The discipline isn't about never stopping. It's about ensuring that when you start, you're starting well. Meetings deserve special attention. Most meetings exist to inform or coordinate, but many are habit more than necessity. Winners audit their meetings and cut ruthlessly. Replace hour-long gatherings with 15-minute huddles, asynchronous updates, or a clear agenda with outcomes. If you're in charge, invite fewer people and ask, does this meeting move the needle? If you're attending, ask if your presence is essential. Respect for attention is respect for results. Focus also demands a newer kind of commitment. Digital minimalism. Notifications are attention's termites. Choose which ones deserve immediate access and turn the rest off. Use do not disturb modes during focus blocks. Schedule times to check messages instead of reacting to every ping. Winners treat communication as important but not urgent unless it truly is. This reorientation reduces the false urgency that eats time. There's a psychological side to focus. 2. Many people avoid intense concentration because it exposes weaknesses, gaps in skill, or uncomfortable emotions. Deep work reveals failure faster. Winners learn to sit with that vulnerability. They accept that the mind will balk at concentration sometimes, and that discomfort is part of growth. The courage to persist through the awkward early stages of deep practice separates the productive from the merely busy. Let me give a small example. A writer I know used a flip between drafting articles and answering client messages. Her days were full, but her drafts never reached depth. She tried the 3-task rule and 2-hour morning blocks for drafting, with email closed and phone on airplane mode. She wrote in the same chair every morning with the same mug and set a 90-minute timer. Within weeks, her work improved in both speed and quality. She finished pieces in fewer drafts and felt less scattered. The change wasn't dramatic. No one paid her for the ritual itself, but her output and self-respect grew. Focus didn't make her more brilliant. It made her work honest. To practice focus this week, start with simple audit. Where does your attention leak most? Track one day and note every time you switch tasks or give into a distraction. Then pick one high-leverage task and schedule a single protected block of time to work on it, 60 to 90 minutes. Before you start, write a one-sentence outcome you want from a block. Close unrelated tabs, silence notifications, and set a timer. After the block, record one sentence on what you produced and how the experience felt. Repeat this ritual 3 times this week and notice whether the friction of distraction feels different. Focus is not heroic isolation. It's selective attention applied with care. When you choose where to look and for how long, You turn vague intentions into concrete results. Attention is a small, renewable resource that compounds. A focused hour today makes the next hour more effective. Winners protect their attention not from life, but for life, so that when opportunity asks for investment, they have the clarity and energy to say yes to what truly matters. Principle 6. Continuous learning. Winners treat learning like oxygen, invisible until it runs out, not because they're endlessly curious in a whimsical way, but because they understand one brutal fact. The world changes, and so must your skill set, judgment, and thinking. Continuous learning isn't a hobby. It's a posture. It's the habit of consistently upgrading the tools in your head, so that when opportunities or challenges arrive, you're the person equipped to handle them. Learning here doesn't mean collecting facts or binge reading trending books. It means converting information into usable skill and better decision making. Knowledge without application is vanity. Applied learning creates leverage. Winners are less impressed by what they know and more interested in what they can do with what they know. That shifts every education choice from passive accumulation to active improvement. One common error is treating learning as an event. We enroll in a course, read a book, feel inspired for a day, and then let the insight evaporate. Learning as a one-off produces occasional sparks, but no structural change. Winners systematize learning. They build habits that translate input into outputs, short experiments, immediate application, and regular reflection. They don't wait for the perfect course or the perfect mentor. They make the resources they have useful. Another mistake is breadth without depth. It's tempting to skim dozens of topics and call it growth. That creates a pleasing sense of progress. I'm learning, while skill remains thin. Winners pair breadth with deliberate depth. They know enough about many things to spot patterns and enough about a few things to produce work that matters. The aim isn't encyclopedic knowledge. It's functional mastery where it counts. Feedback is the engine of learning. Without it, you're practicing in the dark. Winners seek clear, timely feedback and design environments where truth reaches them fast. That might mean weekly reviews with measurable metrics, quick user testing of an idea, or simply asking a tough question of a trusted peer. Feedback can sting, but it's the only way to close the loop between theory and reality. The faster you get honest data, the faster you improve. Deliberate practice is a phrase that deserves more use in everyday life. It's the difference between time spent and time spent well. Deliberate practice isolates the smallest component of a skill that's both meaningful and improvable, then repeats it with attention and correction. If you want better public speaking, you don't just give more speeches. You practice opening lines, pacing, or vocal variety in focused drills and get feedback. Winners break big skills into manageable drills and prioritize the uncomfortable, high-impact parts. Teaching is another underrated accelerator. When you explain a concept to someone else, you quickly discover gaps in your understanding. Winners use micro-teaching, writing short explanations, making a 2-minute video, or coaching a colleague as a way to consolidate learning. The act of translating knowledge into simple language forces clarity and reveals what you don't actually know. Rituals make learning sustainable. Small, repeatable habits beat occasional bursts. Examples at work. A 20-minute nightly reading slot where you annotate one practical idea from a book and list one way to test it. A weekly failure postmortem, where you note what went wrong and why. A monthly skill sprint where you focus on one sub-skill for 30 days. The point is to make learning continuous and measurable, not accidental. Curiosity without critique is another trap. Plenty of people collect opinions and frameworks but never evaluate them. Winners test ideas before they adopt them. They're experimental. Form a hypothesis, run a small test, observe results, learn. This scientific mindset prevents fads and ensures your mental models are battle-tested. You don't need to adopt every new method. You need to evaluate and keep what works. Environment and community matter for learning speed. Surround yourself with people who know more in areas you care about. Join a cohort, a mastermind, or a local group where standards are visible and feedback is honest. That doesn't mean staying in a room where everyone agrees. It means choosing peers who push you to level up. Winners are deliberate about learning networks because the right company shortens a path from knowledge to skill. Information hygiene is practical too. With so much content available, winners are selective. They prefer sources with reproducible insights over viral aphorisms. A useful filter. Will this reading or course give me one testable idea I can try within 2 days? If not, it's entertainment, not education. Winners are pragmatic about inputs. Let me give a brief example. A product manager wanted to get better at data-driven decisions, but felt overwhelmed by analytics. Rather than diving into a year-long degree, she picked 3 metrics that matter for her product, learned how to query them, and set up a weekly dashboard. She paired that with short experiments to change 1 metric at a time and a monthly review of results. She also taught a 15-minute lunch session to her team about interpreting the dashboard. Within 3 months, her decisions were faster and cleaner. The learning was focused, immediately applicable, and reinforced by teaching. Here are practical micro-practices to build this principle into your week. The 22 rule. Spend 20 minutes each day on focused study of a key topic and 2 minutes writing 1 sentence about how you'll apply it this week. The application sentence converts theory into action. Weekly tests. Run 1 small experiment every week that tests an idea you learned. Keep it tiny and fast. The goal is feedback, not perfection. Failure postmortem. Once a week. Write 1 short postmortem. What went wrong, what you misunderstood, and 1 specific change for next time. Micro-teach. Teach 1 idea per month to someone else in a brief format. Explaining consolidates your knowledge and exposes gaps. Feedback sprint. For 30 days, get feedback on 1 skill from a mentor or peer. Even a 5-minute weekly check-in will accelerate improvement. To practice this principle this week, pick 1 small skill relevant to your 90-day goal. Break it into the smallest useful sub-skill. Spend 20 minutes a day on it. Run 1 tiny experiment by the end of the week, and teach what you learned in a short message or conversation. Track what changed. Continuous learning isn't a race. It's a discipline that turns time into capability. Winners don't hoard knowledge. They turn it into applied skill, tested in the arena of real work. Over months and years, that compounding of small, deliberate upgrades is what creates outsized advantage. Keep a learner's posture. Curious, skeptical, experimental, and kind to yourself in the messy middle. Principle 7. Courage. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to act despite it. Winners don't live in a constant state of bravery, like superheroes. They feel the same doubts, the same internal chatter, the same nighttime what-ifs. What separates them is a willingness to make decisions, take risks, and move forward even when the path is uncertain. Courage is a short, sharp muscle that turns plans into reality. Most people confuse courage with dramatic leaps. Quitting a job on a Tuesday, buying a one-way ticket, or shouting a truth in a crowded room. Those moments are visible and messy, but courage is more often mundane and disciplined. The small choices that push you a millimeter beyond comfort every day. Saying no when it would be easier to say yes, asking for feedback instead of avoiding it, making a proposal, and sending it. These quiet acts compound into a life that tilts toward possibility. Fear is inevitable because decisions involve loss. If you choose A, you implicitly forego B. This isn't failure. It's the nature of life. Winners learn to treat loss as a cost of choosing something worthwhile. They practice distinguishing between rational caution and paralyzing fear. Caution slows you gather information. Paralysis freezes you in analysis. Courage is a pivot from sufficient information to committed action. It's the moment you plant your flag and begin building around it. A helpful mental hack is to reframe risk as trade-off instead of threat. Every decision carries downsides. It also carries potential gains. Winners list both, not to avoid risk, but to understand it. This clarity reduces a feeling that choices are random or catastrophic. When you see trade-offs clearly, you can design mitigations, partial experiments, safety nets, or staged commitments that allow movement without gambling everything. Decisiveness is a practical sibling of courage. Indecision is costly. It wastes attention, erodes confidence, and often leaves opportunities to others. Ambiguity invites second-guessing and stealthy sabotage of your own plans. Winners practice decisive moves. They set limits on how long they'll collect information and then decide. The 2-minute rule is useful in low-stakes situations. If you can decide in 2 minutes, decide. For higher stakes, set a deadline for decision-making and stick to it. Deadlines create focus and force a decision quality that's good enough for the moment. Another tool is the premortem. Before a big move, imagine a plan has failed and write down every possible reason why. This exercise reveals hidden risks, helps you design contingency plans, and reduces fear by making problems concrete and solvable. Winners use premortems not to avoid action, but to make action smarter and more resilient. Preparation transforms anxiety into checklist items. Courage also means accepting the cost of being wrong. You will be wrong sometimes. Winners embrace this as part of learning. The key is to make wrongness cheap and informative. That's why experiments matter. Small bets that reveal whether a larger bet is worth making. If a tiny prototype fails, you've learned cheaply. If a massive commitment fails, recovery is harder. Winners structure choices, so the downside is manageable and the upside is scalable. There's a social dimension to courage, too. Speaking truth, setting boundaries, asking for a raise, or admitting you don't know. These acts require social courage. They risk reputation, relationships, and comfort. Yet winners understand that reputation is built on honest action, not on silent compliance. They treat difficult conversations as tasks to be done with skill rather than acts of emotional theater. Techniques like rehearsing main points, writing a short script, or opening with a curious question lower the interpersonal stakes and increase the likelihood of a constructive result. Timing matters. Courage used at the wrong time looks like recklessness. At the right time, it looks like leadership. Winners practice timing by watching feedback loops. If your small experiments consistently show traction, escalate commitment. If they show resistance, adjust. Courage isn't blind stubbornness. It's a willingness to commit while staying responsive. The smartest courage is iterative. Decide, act, measure, adapt. There's another subtle kind of courage that matters enormously. The courage to stop. Many people are brave in starting and cowardly in quitting. Winners have the humility to abandon projects that aren't working and the courage to do so without shame. Stopping early preserves resources for better bets. Courage includes a wisdom to end what no longer serves your purpose. Let me give a concrete example. A designer I know wanted to freelance but feared inconsistent income. Instead of diving in fully or waiting for perfect timing, She ran a 3-month experiment. She took 2 small freelance projects, built simple terms that protected her time, and set aside a cushion equal to 2 months of reduced salary. She also ran a weekly check-in to assess client demand and her own stress. The experiment lowered the social and financial fear enough for her to act. By the end of 3 months, she had a clearer sense of viability and the courage to increase client work or return to employment with better options. The move was courageous precisely because she made it testable and reversible. To practice courage this week, pick one decision you've been avoiding that matters to your 90-day outcome. Apply a simple process. Write the decision, list the trade-offs, run a quick pre-mortem for 5 minutes, and choose one small, reversible action you can take within 48 hours. Make the action visible. Tell one supportive person or put it on your calendar. Small, public commitments make follow-through easier. Another micro-practice is naming your fear aloud in a single sentence before acting, saying, "I'm afraid this will make me look incompetent," or "I'm worried I'll lose stability." Remove some of fear's stealth power and let you plan around it. Often the named fear is less catastrophic than imagined. Even when it is real, naming it helps you prepare. Courage compounds. The more you practice making small, principled decisions, the less overwhelming larger choices feel. Each successful small risk builds credibility with yourself and others. Over time, you become the kind of person who makes decisions with clarity, takes responsibility for outcomes, and recovers quickly when things go sideways. That reputation, your own and in the eyes of others, becomes a currency that buys you leverage, opportunities, and easier trust. Courage is not a one-time act. It's a habit you build. It's the bridge between intention and outcome. Without it, clarity, consistency, and learning stall in a realm of good intentions. With it, your life moves from planning to doing, from possibility to reality. Choose well, act bravely, and learn fast. Principle 8, connection. No one wins alone. Behind almost every achievement you admire, a thriving business, a healed relationship, a creative breakthrough, there's usually a network of people who helped in visible and invisible ways. Connection is the skill of building relationships that matter. Not shallow popularity or transactional networking, but relationships rooted in trust, reciprocity, and usefulness. Winners treat connection as both a strategy and an ethic. They understand that influence is earned through contribution, and that real leverage comes from other people's talents, perspectives, and goodwill. Connection starts with generosity. That word sounds soft, but it's practical. When you help others without a hidden ledger, you create social capital that compounds. Generosity isn't about endless giving until you're depleted. It's about making small, meaningful contributions that build trust. A quick intro between two people who should meet, a thoughtful note after a call, or sharing a resource that solves someone's immediate problem are all generosity moves. Winners practice low-cost, high-value generosity regularly. Over time, it becomes a network that wants to see you succeed. There's a distinction worth noting. Networking for appearances versus networking for contribution. Many people collect contacts like trophies, LinkedIn connections that never translate into real help. Contribution-focused connectors do the opposite. They cultivate fewer, deeper ties and look for ways to be useful first. This orientation makes future asks easier and more natural. When you've habitually delivered value, requesting a favor feels like asking someone who already believes in your potential. Trust is a currency of connection. It's built slowly and eroded quickly. Small acts of reliability, showing up on time, following through, being honest about capacity, accumulate. Winners guard these small promises fiercely because reputation is sticky. Conversely, a single broken promise can cost you months of goodwill. That's why responsible boundaries matter. Say yes when you can fully deliver and say no or negotiate terms when you can't. Reliability breeds trust, and trust powers collaboration. Vulnerability is another underrated ingredient. Authentic connection needs honesty. Winners aren't emotionally flashy, but they are willing to share useful vulnerability, a learning they're working on, a failure that taught them something, or a limitation they hope to overcome. These disclosures are strategic in a humane way. They invite reciprocity and real conversation. People trust humans more than polished personas. Authenticity doesn't mean oversharing. It means being appropriately human. There's also a design element to relationships. Good networks are intentional ecosystems, not random collections. Winners map their relationships like a gardener maps a plot. They know who they need for different purposes. Mentors for perspective, peers for mutual accountability, juniors to teach and grow, and connectors who introduce ideas and opportunities. Regularly pruning shallow ties and investing in promising ones keeps the garden productive. A practical tool is a simple relationship map. List 10 people you interact with and note what each connection provides and what you could give back. This clarifies where to invest energy. Asking for help is perhaps the most courageous relational move. People often worry about being a burden, so they suffer in silence. Winners are strategic about asking. They make it easy for others to help. A good ask is specific, time-bound, and shows appreciation. Instead of, "Can you help me?" try, "Could you introduce me to 2 people in X industry this month?" I'll send a short intro and a proposed ask. Specificity reduces friction and increases the chance of a yes. Remember, most people enjoy helping when the request is clear and not vague. Mentoring and teaching are powerful amplifiers of connection. When you help someone grow, you create a durable relationship and consolidate your own learning. Winners allocate a portion of their social bandwidth to mentoring, not because it's always reciprocated, but because teaching refines judgment and builds allies. Mentorship is not hierarchical benevolence. It's a reciprocal exchange of energy and attention that strengthens both parties over time. Technology complicates connection by offering breadth without depth, but also helps maintain ties over distance. Use tools for deliberate purposes. A brief monthly check-in message, a shared document for mutual accountability, or a calendar invite for a quick coffee chat. Avoid substituting likes and passive reactions for genuine interaction. A 2-minute personalized message will almost always beat a generic comment when it comes to deepening a tie. Boundaries matter because healthy networks don't demand all of you. Winners protect their time and energy so they can be present where it counts. Setting expectations about availability, communication style, and reciprocity prevents resentment. Healthy connection allows for mutual benefit without exploitation. Feedback loops make relational investments useful. Ask people you trust for candid feedback on your approach to connecting and collaborating. Are you being helpful, overbearing, invisible? Honest outside perspective helps you calibrate. Winners solicit this feedback regularly and adjust. Social skill is improvable. It responds to data the same way any other skill does. Let me tell you a quick, real example. A man shifting careers wanted introductions in a new industry. Rather than mass emailing his entire network, he identified 3 people who were credible connectors, did his homework on their needs, and offered to help them first. A piece of research one valued, a warm intro another wanted, and a small volunteer hour for a third's nonprofit. After weeks of small contributions, he made a succinct ask. Could they introduce him to 2 people who hire for X role? The connectors responded positively, because he'd already demonstrated value. He got 3 warm intros and a crucial informational interview. The leverage came from generosity and preparation, not entitlement. To practice connection this week, try 3 micro habits. The 2-minute help. Identify 3 people you can help this week with something that takes under 2 minutes, a useful link, a short intro, a quick piece of feedback. Do it without asking for anything in return. 1 clear ask. For a single person who could accelerate your 90-day outcome, craft a very specific ask, no more than 2 sentences, and send it. Make the request time-bound and easy to say yes to. The relationship review. Spend 20 minutes listing 10 important relationships and note what each connection gives you and what you could give in return over the next month. Pick 2 relationships to invest in with small, consistent actions. Connection is not manipulation. It's mutual benefit shaped by honesty and contribution. Winners don't hoard relationships for prestige. They cultivate them for mutual growth. Over years, a network built on generosity, clarity, and reliability becomes one of the most stable forms of leverage you'll ever own. Invest wisely. Be useful. Show up. The wins that matter will rarely be solo. Principle 9. Leverage. Leverage is a simple math that turns small inputs into outsized outcomes. It's the principle winners use to make limited time, energy, and money go further. Where clarity tells you where to go and consistency keeps you walking, leverage tells you how to multiply each step so your work scales. It isn't a mysterious secret. It's a set of choices about where to apply effort, so the return is more than the sum of the parts. Most people think leverage is only for the rich or the powerful. Capital, large teams, fancy tools. That's a narrow view. Leverage comes in many forms. Other people's time, systems and processes, technology, reusable content networks, and even your own past work. Winners pay attention to where leverage lies and then move resources toward those places. The difference between working hard and working levered is the difference between a life of constant hustle and a life where effort compounds. One reason leverage is underused is psychological. It feels safe to control every detail. Delegation feels risky. Automation feels impersonal. Partnerships require vulnerability, but control is expensive. If you do everything yourself, you hit a ceiling. Your hours are finite. Winners learn to tolerate the small risk of imperfect handoffs in exchange for exponential capacity. They accept that the first 100 tasks they relinquish will be imperfect, but the 100 becomes smooth and worth the trade-off. A practical approach to leverage begins with inventory. List the assets you already have that others might value or that you can multiply. Skills, content, a client list, a process that works, a relationship, a small savings cushion, a routine. Most people overlook these assets because they're familiar. Winners catalog them because once an asset is visible, it becomes something you can deploy. A short inventory turns invisible potential into visible options. Once you've listed assets, ask 2 questions about each. Can this be automated, delegated, or amplified? Automation means using technology or a rule to make a task run with less human attention. Recurring billing, scheduled email sequences, or a simple spreadsheet that calculates what you formerly did by hand. Delegation means handing a task to another person, an assistant, a teammate, a freelancer, so your attention is freed for higher leverage work. Amplification means creating something once that can be used many times. A recorded workshop, a template, a checklist, or a cornerstone piece of content that you repurpose into posts, videos, and a lead magnet. Skill stacking is a special kind of leverage worth naming. It's the art of combining 2 or 3 complementary skills. So your value rises faster than the sum. Writing plus product thinking plus domain expertise turns you into a rare hire. A single skill is useful. A stacked set is hard to replace. Winners intentionally develop stacks. They don't chase every shiny certification. They build combinations that make them uniquely useful in their context. Partnerships and networks are another lever. When you collaborate, you multiply reach and credibility. But partnerships fail when they're transactional or poorly designed. Winners make partnerships specific and mutually valuable. Co-create a product with clear revenue splits, swap distribution channels, or trade complementary skills. Each collaboration should have a clear metric of success and a minimal governance rule, so it doesn't devolve into long meetings and vague expectations. Money is leverage, but it's not the only lever and not always the first. Smart use of capital can buy time, hiring a VA, tools, software that automates repetitive work, or learning a short course that accelerates skill acquisition. The key is marginal returns. Spend money where it creates recurring returns, not one-off consumption. Winners are cautious about spending to look successful. They spend to increase productive capacity. Another practical lever is what I call template-first thinking. When faced with a repeating task, proposals, reports, onboarding, outreach, design a template first. Templates turn effort into reusable assets. The first time a template takes work, the 50th time it saves you time. Winners create templates early and refine them with feedback, turning repetitive labor into systemized output. Risk management matters when you scale with leverage. The upside may be large, but so can the downside if you multiply a bad decision. Winners design levers with guardrails, stage rollouts, testing small bets before scaling, and backstops to protect the essentials. If automation fails, who will notice? If a partner drops out, what's the contingency? Leverage without contingency is vulnerability disguised as ambition. There's an ethical dimension. 2. Using people as mere instruments is not leverage. It's exploitation. True leverage aligns incentives. If you delegate, ensure the person doing the work benefits. If you partner, share upside fairly. Leverage that's built on trust and mutual benefit compounds. Leverage built on extraction collapses when relationships sour. Let me give you a concrete example. A small business owner was spending hours every week creating custom proposals. She realized she could capture the most common elements into a modular template and build an online pricing sheet that allowed clients to self-select a package. She spent 3 hours building the template and automation. The next month, she saved 20 hours and closed more deals because the offer was clearer. Her one-time investment multiplied into recurring time and clarity. That's leverage in action. One thoughtful effort that kept paying dividends. To practice leverage this week, start with a simple audit. Take one repeated task you do each week and ask, could this be automated, delegated, or templated? If the answer is yes, pick one lever and act. If it's automation, set up a simple rule or tool, calendar automation, email templates, a small script. If it's delegation, write a short instruction and test handing the task to someone else. If it's templating, create the first version and use it immediately. Make the change small and observable so you can measure the result. Here are 3 micro practices to build leverage into your routine. First, do a 30-minute leverage inventory one Saturday. List assets, recurring tasks, and 3 places to apply a lever. Second, identify one activity you will delegate this week. Write a single-page process document for it and hand it over. Third, create one reusable asset, a template, a short recorded explanation, or a checklist that convert a 30 to 60-minute task into a 5 to 10-minute repeatable action. Leverage is not a shortcut to circumvent work. It's a smarter allocation of work. Winners don't avoid effort. They place it where it will compound. Over time, disciplined leverage changes the shape of your days. You stop tending to every small fire and start building structures that make good outcomes more likely without burning you out. Apply a little leverage thoughtfully, and you'll be surprised how often a single, well-placed move reshapes what's possible. Principle 10, integration. If the other 9 principles are tools, this 10th one is a craftsman's hand that uses them. Integration is the quiet art of putting clarity, consistency, responsibility, resilience, focus, learning, courage, connection, and leverage into a single, coherent practice, so they don't compete with each other. It's the difference between owning 10 good habits that feel like 10 different jobs and owning a way of life where those habits fold together and amplify each other. Winners don't collect principles like trophies. They weave them into a system that makes progress inevitable. Why is integration the secret? Because life is messy and linear rules rarely survive complexity. You might be clear about a goal, consistent in small actions, and hungry to learn, and still fail because your efforts pull in different directions. Integration is a deliberate work of aligning your choices, so the energy you spend on one principle reinforces the rest. It's not glamorous. It's the ongoing housekeeping of your inner and outer systems. But its absence is noisy and expensive, wasted time, friction, conflicting priorities, and the slow burnout of doing a lot without much forward motion. Integration starts with a single question. Does this action align with my overarching purpose and the other principles I follow? If the answer is ambiguous, integration says don't do it yet. That's the beauty of the system. It gives you a quick filter for choices. Instead of deciding every moment anew, you use the system to make better default choices. The system reduces decision fatigue and makes small wins compound because they're not random, they're cumulative. Practically speaking, integration has a few core moves that you can build into your life immediately. The first is alignment mapping. Take your 90-day goal and map each of the 9 earlier principles to 1 or 2 practical actions that will move that goal forward. For example, clarity becomes your single measurable outcome. Consistency becomes a daily microhabit. Leverage becomes the one template or automation you'll build this quarter. This map makes the abstract concrete. Each principle is not a slogan but a line item in your plan. Second, create a daily 3-sentence ritual that stitches intention to action. Keep it ridiculously short. Morning, 1 sentence describing the single outcome for today. 1 sentence naming which principle is a lens of the day. Today, I'll lead with focus. Tomorrow, I'll lead with connection. 1 sentence listing one thing you'll refuse, a tiny no list. This ritual keeps your day coherent. Over weeks, those micro-alignments become a pattern. Days that look different on the surface still point in the same direction. Third, run a weekly integration review. Spend 30 minutes each week with 4 simple sections. What moved the needle? What contradicted other priorities? What learning should change a plan? And 1 concrete adjustment. This review is the glue. It prevents you from doubling down on activities that feel good, but don't scale, and it lets you reapply courage and leverage without losing clarity. Winners use the weekly review to stay honest about whether their habits are serving the bigger aim. Integration also means designing default rules that translate principles into instant decisions. Examples: if a new meeting doesn't directly support my weekly outcome, decline or propose a 15-minute update. Or, if a decision risks derailing my 90-day metric by more than 10%, require a premortem before committing. Rules are small algorithms for life. They automate alignment and prevent friction between competing priorities. A subtle but crucial part of integration is scaling feedback. When you act, measure, and measure what matters, integration collapses when your metrics are misaligned. If your clarity metric is revenue, but your consistency habit measures hours, you might be busy without progress. Winners map metrics to outcomes and then design small experiments that connect actions to measurable results. That way, learning is not abstract. It is a clear input into the weekly review and the next decision. Connection and leverage are especially powerful when integrated. When you build relationships with generosity and then use those relationships to test small experiments, you multiply learning and opportunity at low cost. When you automate repetitive tasks and free mental space, you allow more energy for courageous choices. Integration looks for those multiplier moments where one aligned action triggers several benefits across principles. Integration also protects against two common failure modes. The first is obsession with one principle at the expense of others. Laser focus without resilience or connection, for example, can lead to brittle success and isolation. The second is the opposite. Try and be well-rounded without depth so nothing sticks. Integration helps you balance depth and breadth by making each principle a lever you can dial up or down depending on context, without abandoning the system. There is a humane side to integration that's easy to forget. Systems can become cold if you treat them like machines. Integration is not about becoming robotic. It is about aligning your life so your values, people, and capacity are respected. That means setting guardrails for rest, protecting relationships, and keeping your health as a non-negotiable. A truly integrated life doesn't destroy joy for the sake of output. It arranges your days so both progress and presence are possible. A short, real-world story. A friend of mine was exhausted running a small consulting firm. She had clarity about revenue targets, consistency in client work, and leverage in templates, but she felt chaotic because she never integrated her calendar with her sales goals and team bandwidth. We mapped her 90-day outcomes and created two rules: limit client work to 60% capacity and reserve 2 mornings a week for deproductization, templates, content. She set a weekly review and a daily 3-sentence ritual. Within 8 weeks, she'd created 1 reusable product, reduced late nights, and found more time to connect with peers. The system didn't do everything for her, but aligned her efforts so small choices stopped fighting each other. To practice integration this week, do 3 things. First, spend 45 minutes creating a 90-day alignment map. Your single measurable outcome and 1 action per principle that serves it. Second, start a simple daily 3-sentence ritual and do it every morning. Third, schedule a 30-minute weekly integration review and treat it like a non-negotiable appointment with your future. These practices are small but compound fast because they turn intention into a living structure. Integration is a final, quiet mastery. Not a louder set of rules, but a calmer architecture for your life. When you weave these principles together, each one supports the others. Clarity shapes focus. Consistency builds resilience. Learning refines leverage. Connection multiplies courage. Alone, each principle is useful. Together, they form a life that doesn't merely react to events but creates its own momentum. That momentum is the real prize. The slow, steady transformation of a life lived on purpose. Conclusion. We started this book with a simple promise: 10 practical principles you can use to move from where you are to where you want to be. Along the way, we've looked at clarity and consistency, responsibility and resilience, focus and learning, courage and connection, leverage, and finally integration, the habit that ties them together. If there's one honest truth I hope you take from these pages, it's this: winning is not a moment, it's a practice. That practice is not always inspiring. Most of it will be small, tedious, and unsexy. You'll block a calendar and write the same paragraph again. You'll show up for a tough conversation. You'll hit pause, apologize, and try again. You will fail at things that matter. But over months and years, those small acts stack. They compound like interest. Winners are not people who avoid setbacks. They are people who treat setbacks as part of the account and continue depositing effort anyway. Books promise metamorphosis. Reality offers slow accretion. Use this book as a manual, not a miracle. Pick one principle that feels most urgent to you right now. Practice it for a month until it becomes a yardstick in your life. Then add another. Don't try to be perfect. Aim to be better today than you were yesterday. The habits you choose and the adjustments you make every week are the scaffolding of a life that wins. A few final practical rules to carry forward. Keep your goals visible. Measure what matters. Design your environment to support the habits you want, and protect your relationships as aggressively as you protect your time. Run short experiments. Ask for feedback, and be ready to change course when the data suggests it. Remember to lead with generosity, not entitlement. Build leverage thoughtfully. Take responsibility for the things you can change and let go of the rest. And be gentle with yourself. The work of transformation requires patience and self-compassion. There will be days when you're proud and days when you feel small. Both are part of the same path. Winners are not people who never stumble. They are people who keep walking, who forgive quickly, and who return to the practice sooner rather than later. If you keep a simple ritual, a visible 90-day goal, a daily sense of intention, a weekly integration review, you'll find the noise fades and the path ahead sharpens. Your days will begin to align not by accident, but by design. You'll find that courage comes easier, that learning feels purposeful, and that other people show up more readily when you show up reliably. This book ends on paper, but not in practice. The real work begins now, in the small choices you make tomorrow morning. If you want a final, compact experiment, take the 90-day goal you wrote at the beginning of the book, map each chapter's principle to one action you will do this week, and commit to the 3 micro-practices from integration. Start there. Small, aligned steps will do the rest. Thank you for reading. May the principles in these pages become quiet tools you reach for without thinking, a way of living that slowly, stubbornly, and lovingly makes you the person you want to be. Keep the map, tend the road, and keep walking.